Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing. It's the hangover podcast, even though none of us were drinking last night, as Rangers lost the Europa League final on penalties after a grueling 120 minutes in Seville in incredible heat. Guys, where to start with this game last night? Where to start with the emotions of the day? It was quite something. I'm going to come to you, Derek, first. How do you sort of sum up? And I know you're probably going to need a little bit of time to process, given you've probably not had an awful lot of sleep. You were back to the house very, very late. But what's your initial thoughts on trying to sum up and encapsulate the events of yesterday?
I think everyone's just gutted at the moment, Johnny. I think it was all there for them. I know you've written a piece on the website this morning when Aribo scored. You're thinking that this is actually on. Rangers are on course to win a European trophy, even though I felt that the goal came against it. They're on a play. I felt that Frankfurt fully deserved an equaliser based on the course of the game. I don't think Rangers were quite at it, but understandable given, as you say, the energy sapping heat and the fact it's a final. It's such a high profile game. I don't think that a number of the players are playing such an important game in their careers. And yeah, just in the stand watching the game, goes to penalties. We watched the Ryan Kent chance. It's huge, of course, puts that away and it's dreamland and Rangers go on and lift the trophy. But if it's at the other end, you're thinking if McGregor makes that save, you're singing the praises of McGregor. So it's just one of those ones. You go to penalties and when Tavernier won the toss and Rangers were shooting towards the Rangers' end, you're thinking this is great stuff, good start. But when Ramsey stepped up, just me and Joshua had the sort of same feeling in our stomachs that he was going to miss.
I had the same feeling.
It had to be him, didn't it?
Yeah.
And the only player that wasn't really part of not through any fault of his own, but the only player that wasn't really part of the journey there.
Johnny, see this bringing substitutes on to hit penalties. When does that ever work? Not a big fan of it. So yeah, we all felt he was going to miss it, and it proved to be the case. I have to say the Frankfurt penalties were top notch. McGregor just couldn't get near any of them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, guys. Can I just ask you, both of you, you first, Derek? When I was watching the penalties, I was resigned to failure. I just felt it in my water. I know that this is nonsense, but I just felt that you don't know. Obviously, I don't know, but I just kind of felt the confidence of the Frankfurt players, the way they were carrying themselves. The way they hit the first couple of penalties, it was so decisive. McGregor really just didn't get anywhere near them. I just wasn't feeling it. Were you the same?
Yeah, and it's sort of, as I mentioned, they were down at the Rangers' end, so it's a bit of a siege mentality for them as well, of course. And they were, the supporters were magnificent for them yesterday at the game. They were really organised in terms of their chanting and all that towards the team, and the whistling was deafening when Rangers had the ball as well. So the fans really got behind them, and yeah, I had that sort of same feeling as you, Johnny. When it goes to penalties, one team has to lose at the end of the day, and unfortunately, on last night it was Rangers. But I mean, the Aribo goal, when that win, and that's a feeling that, of course, we'll live with us for a long time. But unfortunately, they just they couldn't go on and win the game and do the business. I have to say the Aribo goal as well. It was a defensive calamity. You've got to say Rangers really never really carved open Frankfurt, but I guess understandable given the fact that there's no real recognised striker there. The only real chance of, as I mentioned, was a Kent opportunity. But again, it's a top save. If McGregor makes that, you're saying it's a world class save. So they just didn't do enough, unfortunately. And then I think Frankfurt, as hard as it sounds, probably deserved it over the piece.
Well, Johnny, you see just as well in the penalties. You see if Fashion Sakala had taken one and Ramsey and stayed on the bench, everyone would have said you should have put Aaron.
100% agree. Josh, I don't agree with Derek at all. This is modern football, but there's a reason people do this. I believe that this is the right thing. If you've got a penalty taker who is a penalty taker,
Fashion Sakala hits penalties for Zambia, so I don't know where.
Fashion Sakala gave one of the most brutal performances I've ever seen in my entire life for the 20 minutes he was on. But things bounced off him like he was a brick wall.
But he can hit penalties.
I wouldn't have liked to have tested that out based on his touch and his performance in that game. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him, but no, for me, I don't mind that.
Somebody's got to miss, Johnny. Somebody's got to miss it. It's hard to have a right go at Aaron Ramsey.
Listen, somebody's got to miss. You're absolutely right. But I don't mind the idea of we've got a good penalty taker who is a nice, cool chap. Aaron Ramsey, you know, he's not the guy that you're going to think is going to be fazed by that. He clearly wanted to take the penalty. Gio said after the game, I think to the press conference, that he was one of the stipulated guys, and that's why they brought him on. I don't mind that. If he scores, nobody is obviously talking about this. Josh, listen, my piece this morning was talking about how I didn't feel that penalties were actually the defining moment of the game. To me, the defining moment in the game came in the 118th minute. I don't have the XG figures to hand, but when you're 3 yards out from goal and I've got an open net to fire into, you're always going to say that that's a big moment, aren't you? Especially with such a little time left to go. That ball from Kemar Roof, he's expertly moved through that defence and avoided the offside.
Yeah.
Making an incredible difference. The big argument is, of course, he should have been on sooner. And rather than putting on Sakala, I know he would have put him on for his pace and to stretch the back line. But if Roof had come on with maybe the rest of extra time to go and give him a proper opportunity, then you never know what would have happened. The ball comes in and Kent just misconnects it. He hits with his shin, doesn't he? And rather than putting it into the corner, he puts it back across the keeper, who's kind of fallen in the wrong direction, but is trailing legs enough to stop the ball. And then not even that. I mean, guys, the ball comes out to Stephen Davis. It's an unbelievable connection. Stephen Davis, you guys won't have seen it, and because you were at the game, there's an angle behind the goal. Stephen Davis is putting that into the top corner. It is going in the top corner. And the defender, who's straining every sinew in his body, manages to get his quiff on the top of it. I mean, it's a fraction. And that, because of the pace of the ball, that fraction of a quarter of an inch moves it above the net. I mean, that was a goal. It was in. So that was an even better block than Trapp's, to be honest. So in that 15-second phase of play, for me, that are two incredible opportunities for Rangers to actually win the game.
Yeah, and of course, as Derek says, when Rebo scores that goal, and we can talk about how if Rangers were poor or whether, I don't think they performed to their best, but I think when you take in all the factors, the heat, the level of the opponent, which maybe is kind of gets lost because Rangers have made it to the final, and the setups, I think there's factors for that. For me, on the penalties, I think just the tiny difference maybe was, in the game, you see when, for me, the difference between the two sides was, and again, not necessarily a criticism of Rangers, because this is a team from a Big Five league, as much as people would have felt, and we all felt, I think, quite confident going into the game, justifiably because of previous results, when Rangers didn't have enough of an out ball, and I think when the ball broke down, there was more tension in their play, there's more anxiety in their play, whereas Frankfurt were always looking for opportunities. I think that was a bit of a difference, and I think you could see in their penalties, they were hit to the maximum. They were hit like training ground penalties, and most of the Rangers were as well, and with Ramsey, it's just unfortunate. I think on Roof, I totally agree. His movement behind, even though he's not the quickest, his movement, I thought Rebo did okay up front, and he obviously scores that goal, but he wasn't kind of making that move in the same way, and you have to presume that Roof wasn't that fit, because surely he'd have otherwise come on for Sakala, because Sakala fundamental, as we know, just doesn't really work. And the last thing, I don't know whether it was just because the game was stretched or Rangers' physicality was better going the distance, but I thought when Rangers went to a back three, just for that kind of, was it the whole of extra time? Can't remember. A lot of extra time anyway, maybe 20 minutes of it. For me, I think that gave them better options up the pitch, because Tavernier could push higher, could push on to Kostic instead of Kostic pushing on to him.
Honestly, Joshua, I could not agree more. I just thought it would just made such a difference, but yeah,
and again, there's I'm not going to sit here and say Van Bronckhorst should have done that sooner, because you look at all his calls he's got right, and we, you don't know what's happening with the sub situations, all these things. But I just think when Rangers matched Frankfurt up,
Yeah.
I thought they did quite a good job of containing them, and Kent and Wright were, the Rangers were trying to keep the pitch small, and there wasn't enough options to get the ball up the pitch. And I think that's because, if Lundstrom or Jack's coming out to right back, Tavernier's pushing high, you can't move the ball through the middle because you've only got one player in there. It's really risky. You see that actually for, I think, Kamada, when he lobs it onto the roof of the net, all comes from Rangers kind of overplaying for once in that area. But they almost also managed to restrain Frankfurt for a lot of the game. So I think when in hindsight, obviously this run will be talked about with great pride. And even though last night Rangers were probably second best for large parts of it, you're right, Johnny. Those moments are still so. Rangers were inches away from winning it, and that's the reality of it, and obviously devastating for everyone inside the stadium. I think even you seen Frankfurt celebrations. I was there right out until kind of 1-2 in the morning, and the celebrations were quite muted, and I think that was because everyone was just honestly exhausted. I mean, it's going to be 37 degrees here today. There was no water for a lot of the fans in the stadium. It was it was not an ideal situation. So I think that's probably got, it's obviously going to affect the game as well. If even the fans at the end, the Frankfurt fans, they looked tired celebrating.
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying that about the fans, saying, "Oh, the fans didn't do enough. There was too many non-diehards in there who had the money to go along, pay the fortunes that were required to get tickets." I think people need to realise we've spoken to people with testimony who were actually there, right? And I don't know how many of you who are criticising have done that. I get that when you're watching on the telly, Frankfurt fans did sound louder of the two sets of fans. There's no getting away from that, right? Everyone's talking about that. You guys can maybe talk about that in a minute. But I think we need to remember what UK football fans are like. Number one, they drink like fishes. I know Germans drink as well, but we know what Rangers fans are going to be like over there. Number two, we're not used to the heat. Right? Scottish people are just not used to that level of exposure, basically. It's as simple as that, really. I mean, we're just not ever used to getting that. And number three, you factor in then when these people are not hydrated properly, then it's going to be a bad situation in terms of people just keeling over, drinking all day, not used to the heat, and then not getting water. It's absolutely unreal that was allowed to happen. I mean, that Seville stadium should have been stocked to the gills with water. Absolutely stocked to the gills. They've failed in their duty of care, UEFA. It's an absolute shocker. And reading testimony this morning on social media, getting messages, WhatsApp messages from friends who were there, speaking to people on the phone, it's quite clear that this was an absolute basket case of an organisational structure by UEFA around this game. From getting into the stadium, to the lack of water, to the other thing, which is that stadium's an absolute death trap. You just look at it. If you fall over, if you slip, if you don't even need to have had a drink. If you slip up there in those top tiers, it's got the potential to be absolutely disastrous.
Johnny, they put, even in the press box, they put like little temporary plastic steps in between the actual stone concrete steps because they were so steep as well. Stevie Clifford, who was there for us as well, was a bit worried about getting back down the stairs. But the fans, the stories I'm hearing as well, horror stories about even just getting into the ground, Spanish police being overzealous and getting the batons out when it was unnecessary. Even myself, I was walking along with the Rangers fans heading in, and I had to get into the media entrance, and I had to explain, sort of Stan Collymore style, that I had to get in past their sort of cordon to get into the media entrance, but it was heavy-handed. And then in the stadium, I was in the Bills at times. You walk down from the press area and the fans are congregating. The queues were unbelievable. There was nothing to eat, no drinks. At some point, there was a woman apparently just giving fans bottles and going and asking them to fill up their bottles in the toilet with Spanish water. So, I mean, this is a European final, and the service and the consideration to supporters was so bad it defies belief. It really is quite staggering, and you can understand why the Rangers supporters who are in in that stadium. No cover, of course, as well. Dehydrated, searing temperatures. Why they're struggling in that heat. I mean, before kickoff, they were in full voice. I've posted all the videos. You've all seen them online. But as the match wears on, of course, anxiety sets in a bit. Everyone's nervous as well. And yeah, it was just UEFA need to take a good hard look at themselves, because that was unacceptable yesterday. I mean, walking down as well, that they were shutting down the kiosks when they were running out of water. I was hearing that the Frankfurt fans were bashing the kiosks, and then the Spanish police were wading in as well. So it was just an absolute nightmare down there. And serious questions have to be asked, because that stadium should not have hosted a European final.
No, absolutely no chance. Antiquated. Josh, let's analyse the key moment, which was their goal. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the comments very critical of Connor Goldson. The TV coverage, which you guys won't have seen, was very, very critical of Scott Wright for not cutting out the cross, not doing enough. It was a bit lackadaisical. Tavernier was also involved in that, although he wasn't singled out. I thought Tavernier had a poor game by his own incredibly high standards last night. I thought he was okay going forward, but the amount of times he gave the ball away was not good. But we're going to focus just on the goal. Josh, you obviously are the tactical guru on the site. What did you make of it, and why do you think Connor Goldson didn't stretch and try and cut it out at source before it got to the striker? And Calvin Bassey was obviously beaten to the ball.
Yeah, and Calvin Bassey, who was man of the match for me, I thought he was just
unbelievable.
I mean, it was actually ridiculous at points. The one where he slipped, just quickly, the one where he slipped and managed to recover it, is just ridiculous. And yeah, anyway, why did Goldson not cut that? I mean, the only thing I can think is that he gets a shout from his goalkeeper. I don't know that, obviously, but it's strange, because it's not as if it's a. Sometimes I think you see defenders when the ball's maybe a bit higher and the crosses from an angle, deeper in the pitch, allow the ball to flash across the face of goal because they know it's going out of play. But when it's such a straight ball, it was really strange that it was allowed to go past. So you don't know. I mean, Goldson will get criticised. All these players will get criticised, but Goldson's been immense to even get to this point. And obviously, it'll be hard for people to probably not feel really frustrated in those moments, understandably. But I think over the course of Frankfurt's league position kids on, obviously their ability. They went away to Barcelona and defeated West Ham. They're a really strong team over 2 ties. And I think just in moments you were able to see their quality, in particular when they moved the ball through the middle of the pitch. I think in moments they did that really well. So I think you can only presume it was a shout, because I don't know why else you would do that, really, Johnny. But maybe he didn't hear his goalkeeper because of the noise in the stadium. Who knows? But it was certainly a bad one, and the movement from the striker kind of pulls Bassey backwards and then nips in. So bad time to lose a goal as well, because I think Rangers just needed to kind of get maybe 15, 20 minutes. I was even thinking Mo van Bronckhorst just try and sit back and be compact. But again, these are all the fine margins that sometimes maybe there's not a right answer. Frankfurt had, you look at that Kamada chance, you look at moments in the first half, they would have felt very aggrieved had they lost that game in 90 minutes, because Derek's right, Rangers didn't open them up. I think it wasn't probably until extra time when they matched them up that they did a little bit more, and the goal, conceded it. Not a great time having just gone ahead.
Yeah, listen, Josh, we know, and we've talked about on the website and on these conversations so often about Connor Goldson and his ability to pick out a pass with these amazing diagonals that he's got. It's just such a huge part of Rangers' armoury. And of course, it'll be massively missed when he goes.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen him be so inaccurate. It'll be interesting when you do your stats bomb piece. The data's in as to how inaccurate he was throughout the game. Watching it was quite frustrating because you felt like every time he got the ball, he was pinging it out wide into the stand or out for a throw in and touchline. Sorry, I'm so tired. I'm struggling.
No, it's fine. I get your point. I'll weave in. Yes, I think to your point. Yes, he was inaccurate. What you would say to the opposite is, as we said, I think on the halftime spaces, Johnny, Frankfurt weren't putting any pressure on the centre backs whatsoever. So there was no one open to receive a pass in the think of some of Goldson's trademarks passes this year, like a bit of hearts away when he's got the space to hit in behind, or even semi-final, yeah. Or we mentioned the Lyon game on spaces last night. I think because Frankfurt were so wide and they were stretching the pitch, their wing backs could be aggressive on Rangers fullbacks, and the area of the pitch where Rangers had space was in those pockets inside the pitch, where Frankfurt only had 2 midfielders. But Rangers didn't have the midfielders to then go and progress the ball at the pitch. So although Goldson was inaccurate, I think it's difficult because everyone was presuming he was going to hit diagonals, and Frankfurt could adjust accordingly. And then I think because of that, he was trying to maybe hit them a little bit more accurate, or hit the corners a little bit more, because Frankfurt were so wide. You could see that on the TV, both in and out of possession, and that didn't give, I wrote my colour piece, didn't give him really any areas to target. So as much as I think his distribution was poor, I think the context of no pressure on the ball and Frankfurt's setup made it quite difficult for him to get the ball forward. And at times you could see Van Bronckhorst kind of waving up Lundstram into the midfield. But I think when Rangers went to even a back three trying to pass out, it stretched the Frankfurt front three. And in hindsight, I think it is maybe surprising Rangers didn't just tweak that a little bit more, because there wasn't enough ideas or invention. I think the only time in the 90 minutes that Rangers really played through Frankfurt was if there was a little break in play, or they managed to move it quickly, and the tempo was slow, and that fed into a bit of an anxious atmosphere for the watching Rangers support, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, Board Silly saying, I won't miss Goldson. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Believe me, you will.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's been so robust. He's missed 12 games or something since he's been here, and I mean there's games that he's been rested for it as well. Of course, he's huge for Rangers, not only on the park but behind the scenes as well. He's a vice captain for a reason. He's the glue that holds that defence together, and he's going to be a huge loss. How do Rangers replace him? That's a big question that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is going to have to find the answers to in the summer. I know that John Suter is coming in, of course. He has his injury issues, so it remains to be seen if he is the out-and-out replacement. I'd imagine they'll be trying to bring someone else in. Of course, we've got Phil Hollander to come back as well. Leon Balogun, it remains to be seen if he'll stick around. But it's going to be a huge loss. You just wonder where his next destination is going to be, Johnny. I don't think he's going to sign on. I think everyone's resigned to the fact that he's going to leave. But he's certainly one of those players that you'll certainly realise how much you relied on him when he goes.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if he's not in the Premier League next year, but that's another issue, I suppose. Josh, in terms of just tactically trying to pick apart this game and where the key battles won and lost, I mean, do you agree that this was just a coin flip of a game? A coin flip that came down to a coin flip. It was fine margins. Yes, Frankfurt looked slightly better. Yes, they looked a little bit more composed on the ball. Yes, they didn't look as threatened. But I mean, it's margins, isn't it? And that last chance, 2 minutes to go, 2 great opportunities. I mean, it was there to grab.
Yeah, and if Kent puts that away, you'd say brilliant for Van Bronckhorst to only switch to the back three. It's all outcome bias, and it's hard to kind of sort through what is outcome bias and what isn't. I think that, as I said, the difference for me was you looked at Rangers clearing the ball and without Morelos to wrestle them up the pitch in stages, with the caveat of the heat. I think Frankfurt's so quick and when they counter. I think Rangers kind of stopped them doing that. The only time was when Tavernier lost the ball, I think, in the first half, and had to, chase Kostic up the whole pitch, and Kostic put it just wide. I think you could see Frankfurt's quality in moments. Of course you could. And Rangers, without, when they've played this system and when they've played it at Ibrox, I think when it's sitting higher, you can create chances through, pressing in high moments, as you've seen for Scott Wright, the second goal. Scott Wright's pressure for the second goal against Leipzig. And as well as that, when you're being direct, when the opposition's pressing you and you're going back to fourth, as we've seen for the first goal against Leipzig. Neither of those things were there last night. Rangers couldn't be that aggressive and treat it like a home game, because it wasn't a home game, it was a final. And as well, the opposition only pressured them in moments, and that didn't give them the space to play into. It didn't kind of feed into the maybe the to and fro would have suited Rangers a little bit more. And of course, I think the heat definitely, Johnny, played a big factor in that. As we said, 34 degrees, I think, even beyond kickoff last night.
We had the water breaks, of course, as well. It sort of tells you how hot it was and how uncomfortable it was at times out there.
Do you know what, though? Here's another thing that I was thinking about last night. We can say that it was a 1-1 draw. I would have fancied Rangers to beat Eintracht Frankfurt over 2 legs, guys.
Yeah.
If this had been home and away,
yeah,
I don't think Frankfurt could have coped with Rangers at Ibrox. I really don't. I don't think they were better than Leipzig or Dortmund. I know they're not better than them, and they didn't impress me to the extent that I thought they were better teams. Ultimately, what this was about was Rangers in this European run were propelled by the home crowd, propelled by the atmosphere, by the drama. They were very, very tactically astute away from home and left themselves in a situation that they always could have enough at Ibrox. This was a totally different atmosphere, obviously, in this sort of one-off game. And I'm not sure that Giovanni van Bronckhorst really did get his tactics wrong. I think he continued what's got him to this stage, which is watching what's happening and reacting in real time to what's happening and trusting in his instincts to do that. A lot of people in the comments here, guys, saying that the substitutions weren't right. Why was Sands put on? Why was Sakala put on?
I just think, Johnny, on that we don't know the backstory as well. Roof and Ramsey obviously weren't fit. Sands, I guess to go into the back three and really probably maybe at that point to get Rangers to penalties, even though they were stronger in the second half. Sakala's the only reason I can think Sakala would have come on through the middle. I mean, the only time through the middle I think he's done well recently was against Celtic away at Parkhead when there's a little bit of space to run into, but he gets confused, it seems, and comes towards the ball and whatnot. And just one other point on the quality difference. I thought the difference in Frankfurt's wing-backs' quality into the box, which you see for their goal, and Rangers fullbacks was pretty stark. I don't know if that was because Rangers fullbacks had much more defensive work to do because they were in a back four rather than a back five. But I always felt that when Knaf and Kostic got the ball, there was real potential danger, and I think Tavernier's deliveries weren't great. Barisic came and went throughout the game, but didn't have one of those games where he's not going to beat players one-on-one that often and didn't really get many opportunities for delivery. So I think that was quite an important distinction as well between the two teams, the kind of quality from out wide. But as you rightly say, Johnny, it's hard to make this argument given that Rangers beat Dortmund and Leipzig. But to be at this stage of the competition is such a punch above the weight in and of itself. Obviously, it's hugely disappointing for Rangers to not win because there's no rules that they shouldn't be here. They deserve to be here. But obviously, you do have to remember that when discussing it, that this is a team that's, you look at some of the players they've sold recently. In recent years, their forwards, Haller and Jovic to Real Madrid. I think Haller is now going to is it Dortmund maybe. So, you know, not to make excuses, but obviously they are a top team, and I thought in moments you could see that quality and it made a difference. Just
touching on Barisic, Johnny, he was desperate to stay on for penalties, and Van Bronckhorst said in the press conference he was one of the first players that was going to line up to hit a penalty, and you could see him looking to the clock and thinking, can I just hobble on until the end here? In the end, he comes off and Kemar Roof comes on for him, doesn't he? So I wonder if Roof would have came on had Barisic stayed fit.
I think it was. I don't know if Ramsey was maybe even going to come on. I don't know, because he was coming out from the bench after Roof. Maybe that's nothing. Yeah. But I think Roof would have definitely come on and take a penalty because he is, well, he's one of the three penalty takers, I guess you'd say, with Barisic.
Penalty was a beauty, to be fair.
It was a great penalty.
And the Davis penalty was a beauty as well. Yeah. Arfield and Tavernier, of course. Davis one was sublime, as cool as you like, wasn't it?
Davis was terrific when he came on. Absolutely terrific. Left nothing out there. Guys, we can't keep going on. You guys are going to get literally thrown out of your Seville ball.
Yeah.
Derek, just touch on how it's been over there. You've been there since Sunday. It's been quite the journey. God knows how many thousands of followers we've added on our social media platforms. It's been hectic, but have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, the result aside, Johnny, it's been absolutely brilliant to be out here. We arrived on Sunday. atmosphere and walking around the streets, speaking to supporters, not just at the Rangers, but the Frankfurt fans as well. It's been a right good atmosphere. Really loved it, taking the videos, doing the walkarounds, and the game last night, albeit the result never went the way we would have liked. But the whole occasion, it's why we love football, isn't it? And it was a right privilege to be here. Yeah, so it's been I don't know about you, Joshua, but I've had a great time.
Agreed. Just thanks to everyone for obviously not the outcome everyone wanted, but thanks to everyone for interacting with the show and reading the content, and hope you've enjoyed it. And it's been fantastic to get to this stage. I think a run everyone will look back upon with fond memories. Certainly a run I feel very privileged to have worked within. And yeah, we'll obviously have the Scottish Cup final on Saturday, Johnny, and then it'll be all about looking ahead to the big questions of the summer. Van Bronckhorst building a domestic team. How can Rangers navigate the qualifiers? Football never really stops, doesn't it? So no. I think in hindsight, this will be a fantastic run to look back on and a wonderful city and a great atmosphere. You've got to say throughout, I think the Rangers fans really enjoyed themselves. Absolutely, I didn't see one bit of trouble whatsoever.
No.
The relationship between the fans was great. Lots of singing. Lots of congratulations after the game last night. So a good week for the Seville economy as well, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to apologise about some of these comments that are coming through here. Some really unacceptable stuff going on in this comments. I am trying to block people, but unfortunately, guys, trying to manage the conversation and block people and keep on top of everything that's been said is quite difficult to do all at the same time. So I'm trying my best to make sure some of these are actually taking off the conversation. So I do apologise about that. Derek, can you have a little chat about our sponsor? Because me being knackered, I haven't thought to talk about OneFootball. So let's have a talk about their app.
There's our sponsor, folks. You can see it on your screen, the OneFootball app, your one-stop shop for all your footballing needs, absolutely free as well. So get it downloaded now. You can get all the news on Rangers. It's so in-depth, it's unreal. Everything from everything that's coming out of Ibrox you can find on there. Not only that, there's stuff on other sides as well, so you can keep yourself abreast of all that's going on in Scottish football and far and wide as well. So it's OneFootball app, folks. Head over there, as I mentioned, absolutely free, and we'd heartily recommend it. Myself, Joshua, and Johnny. I know that many of you have already downloaded it and are singing its praises. So yeah, OneFootball app is the place to go.
Link in the description. Link at the top of the description.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all helping each other here to get through this. None of us are our best today. I think that's quite clear. Listen, guys, we've still got, obviously, on the website, the £6 for a 6 months deal. That'll cover you. Unfortunately, it won't cover you for the Super Cup in Helsinki, which I think Derek's going to have to cancel some quite nice accommodation for, to be honest.
Yeah.
The old theory that we did it for Seville and it worked, therefore it must work for Helsinki didn't quite stand up, sadly, but there we go.
Yeah.
But what it will cover you is for Rangers rebuild, and it's going to be a pretty spectacular summer. There's no doubt about that. There's going to be significant spend on this squad, and there's going to be significant players leaving, I think. Listen, just a quick word again, just on this, Derek. I just want to throw this back to you. And I know we've got to get you away, but just before you go, I don't feel like we've really touched on this enough. We've mentioned Calvin Bassey. What a performance. A colossus, a titan. I've noticed on Twitter a number of major UK and European journalists at the game blown away. People like Jonathan Wilson, Archie Rintut, people like that, who maybe haven't seen Calvin Bassey in the flesh, just remarking on his quality. He's got 2 years left in his contract, which means Rangers would get a pretty penny. Now, he's also homegrown for Premier League clubs. He's 22 years old. Guys, would you be surprised if he was to be the subject of major bids in the summer? Because
Johnny,
I'll be so shocked if we're not talking about £25 million bids for this kid.
That's a bargain,
and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's a starting figure. His performance last night was one of the best defensive displays I've ever seen. Watching Rangers, I mean, as Joshua mentioned earlier, that the slip that looked almost fatal. And with this second half, was it extra time? But then the recovery pace was ridiculous to get back and make the vital interception. Then not only that, just moments later he did likewise. He got another defensive block. Coming out of defence, so composed. His upper body strength is magnificent. You've seen a number of the Frankfurt players looking over to the linesman and the referee wanting a free kick, but there was none given. There were just no match for Bassi. This has been his breakthrough season, of course, at Rangers. Remember that night in Prague when he played in the defensive partnership with Leon Balogun, I think it was, and he looked like a fish out of water. But since Giovanni van Bronckhorst has come in, he's moulded him into a superstar, Johnny. He can do whatever he wants in the game. He done it on the biggest stage last night, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see a host of clubs testing the water in the summer. I think he can go all the way to the top. I'm talking higher echelons of the Premier League.
Yeah, I take it you agree with that, Josh.
Yeah, I seen someone I follow on Twitter who you know, Johnny, Stevie Grieve, said he'll be something along the lines of England's left-sided Kyle Walker in terms of his recovery pace, and has almost been a cheat code at the back. And
yeah, that is exactly what he is.
Yeah, remarkable a season for him. I think a remarkable player, and his performance just, as you say, took the attention of everyone. Just a shame he didn't have a winner's medal, because his performance totally justified that.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we might come back later on in the day once we're a bit more settled. The boys have got the journeys back. Josh is off to lovely Madrid, where we might get a live from the Bernabeu. I don't know.
I'm not. I'm not leaving. I discovered I actually booked my train. The only available one was 7. So I'm not even going to get into Madrid till about 9:30. So it's going to be a long day in the Seville sunshine for me. Tomorrow morning. Well, my flight's at 10. It's a bit tight. Long day in the Seville sunshine. So if anyone's still about, let me know.
We can do a bit of tourism stuff today rather than the kind of football related stuff. Derek, you're back to Faro, aren't you?
No, sorry. Malaga for me, Johnny. Get a bus back at 3:00. It's just under a 3-hour bus. So back to Malaga, and then flying from Malaga tomorrow to Brussels, and from Brussels to Manchester, and then the drive up to Hampden on Saturday. So I've got to admit, I can't wait for this season to end. I think I'm worn out. I think at the end of this one, it's been quite a season, but yeah, looking forward to a break from football at least. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, folks, we're going to call it a day there. 37 minutes on a day like this, on a morning like this, is more than enough. So thank you very much for watching. Again, thanks for all your support over the last week. It's been massively appreciated. We hope you've enjoyed the coverage. We've certainly tried to go above and beyond in terms of reaching out to everyone as much as we possibly can. You can support us on the website, £6. That gets you 6 months coverage. It's not £6 a month, guys. It's £6. That's it. You won't have to think about it again for another 6 months in terms of payment. And that helps support what we do. We couldn't do it without you. We've got a massive, massive summer ahead of us covering Rangers. And we hope you come along for the journey. Get your heads up this morning, guys. You've got Saturday to look forward to. This can still be a trophy-winning season, and we'll be there at Hampden to make sure you get every bit of the action. Until next time, thanks for watching.